Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we're back here today with another edition of Against the Odds. So last week in our Against the Odds poll, Realm Razer in Modern came out the clear-cut #1 option. Came in 3 percentage points ahead of Saffron in Standard. So this week we are playing some Realm Razer in Modern. As you can see, the deck's pretty expensive, not that it really matters for Against the Odds, but it's $612 in paper, $412 on Magic Online. Anyway, let's talk about the deck. It turned out pretty sweet. So, first off, we have our combo, so to speak. Obviously, Realm Razer, the card of the week. It is a Naya colored, so red, green, and white, and 3 generic mana, and you get a 4/2 when it enters the battlefield or comes into play. You remove all lands from the game. When it leaves play, you return all the cards removed by Realm Razer to the battlefield under their owner's control. So basically, it enters the battlefield, you exile all lands. When it leaves the battlefield, you return all lands. So the thing about Realm Razer is, obviously, it is a Armageddon type effect. The problem is, it comes on a very fragile body. It's a 4/2, so it dies to literally everything in Modern. Anything that can kill a creature, from Lightning Bolt to Path to Exile to Go for the Throat, it will kill the Realm Razer. And if we play the Realm Razer and spend 6 mana on it, and our opponent just floats 1 red mana before we exile everything and plays a Lightning Bolt, we spent that 6 mana for nothing. So I wanted to come up with a way that we could help reduce the problem of this fragility. And the answer I came to was Evolutionary Leap. So Evolutionary Leap, as you know, currently in Standard, 1 and a green enchantment. You can pay a green, sack a creature, you reveal cards from the top of your library till you hit a creature card and put that creature in your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So, Evolutionary Leap does 2 things. First off, it obviously helps us find our Realm Razers. We can sack our other creatures, and eventually we will reveal our way into a Realm Razer. But the other thing is, Realm Razer is worded archaically. If you want an example of this, look at Oblivion Ring, and then look at Banishing Light. They changed the formatting on these exile, then when it leaves play, return everything cards, to make them work the way you would expect them to work. But there's a cool trick you can do with the cards that are formatted in the old way, and that is if they die, or you can kill them or sacrifice them, like with Evolutionary Leap, in response to their enters the battlefield trigger, their death trigger resolves first. So with Realm Razer, if we can play it, we'll put a trigger on the stack that says exile all lands, and then if we can sack it to Evolutionary Leap in response to that trigger, on top of the Exile All Lands trigger will be the Return All Lands trigger. So the Return All Lands trigger resolves first, and that means that Exile All Lands trigger resolves afterwards, and all those lands will be exiled permanently. So we can turn it into a real, true, actual Armageddon effect by sacking it in response to its triggered ability. Then, of course, our magical Christmas land inclusion, Oblivion Sower. People in the comments were really excited about this part of the combo, but basically the idea is you can Realm Raze all your opponent's lands, which puts them into exile. Then, if somehow you can cast an Oblivion Sower, you get to steal all of your opponent's lands from exile. You get their lands, you have a bunch of lands, they have no lands, so on. The problem is that Realm Razer exiles all lands, not just opponent's lands, so we're trying to cast a 6 mana creature in Realm Razer, exiling all of the lands, and then somehow having 6 mana left over to cast an Oblivion Sower. So I don't expect that to be something that happens often, but that's the idea of it. So anyway, Realm Razer, exile lands, Evolutionary Leap can sack it in response. Then the trick is breaking the symmetry of having no lands. So in a situation after Armageddon, discounting like aggro decks, which like Armageddon because they can just keep beating down with their creatures, the way you can win after exiling all the lands is to have more mana than your opponent. So you can keep casting spells, or we can keep casting spells, but our opponent won't be able to. So we have 7 Mana Dorks, 4 Noble Hierarchs, 3 Birds of Paradise, and then we have 3 Garruk Wildspeakers, which, among other things, can untap 2 target lands. So if we can get 2 lands back on the battlefield after exiling everything, we actually have 4 mana, which allows us to play most of the cards in our deck. So these cards not only help us ramp into Realm Razer and Oblivion Sower, but they also break the symmetry after we exile all the lands. Then we have the glue that kind of holds the deck together. We have 3 Chords of Calling. Basically, it's a creature tutor. It has Convoke, so we can tap creatures to reduce its mana cost, but it's a way to search a Realm Razer out of our deck and find a copy of it. It also can create this cool chain with the other cards on this list. Eternal Witness, as you know, 3 mana, 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you get to return a card from your graveyard to your hand. So with Chord of Calling and 6 mana, including the mana we can generate by tapping creatures to Convoke, we can Chord of Calling for Eternal Witness and immediately get the Chord of Calling back from our graveyard. And then, of course, we have the Eternal Witness on the battlefield, which is at least 1 more mana for the following turn. So the next turn, we can Chord of Calling for a Restoration Angel, blink the Eternal Witness, get the Chord of Calling back from our graveyard. And then that puts us up to having enough mana that we can Chord of Calling for the Realm Razer, exile all the lands, we have a bunch of creatures, and hopefully we can win the game from there. So that's kind of the chain. We can build up from the Eternal Witness with the Chord, to the Resto with the Chord, to finally the Realm Razer with the Chord. So it works pretty well. Flicker Wisp is kind of a substitute for the Resto. When it enters the battlefield, you get to flicker a permanent, you exile it, and then at the end of turn, you return it to the battlefield. The cool thing about this one is it's a little cheaper than Resto, so sometimes if we have a bunch of mana dorks, maybe some beast tokens from Garrick, we can play our Realm Razer from our hand and have enough creatures that we can Chord for the Flicker Wisp, and then the Flicker Wisp we can use the same way we would use the Evolutionary Leap to flicker our Realm Razer in response to the Exile of the Land triggers, which exiles all the lands permanently, as we were talking about with the Evolutionary Leap. So that's why there's 1 copy. It's basically a Chord target in conjunction with Realm Razer. Removal-wise, 4 pass, 1 Fiend Hunter. Fiend Hunter is a removal spell that we can Chord for. Can also sort of do the same thing with Realm Razer as Flicker Wisp, where we use it to get rid of our Realm Razer in response to the trigger. The cool thing I realized about Path, I mean, normally we're using it to kill one of our opponent's creatures, but we can also use that as a way, say we play a Realm Razer, we don't sack it, we don't have a way to get it off the battlefield to exile the lands permanently, we can wait until our opponent's turn, path our own Realm Razer. Not only do we get a basic from the path, all the lands will come back into play, but they come into play tapped. So if we do this during our opponent's turn, they don't have access to mana, but we get to untap with a ton of mana. We could play an Oblivion Sower, play another Realm Razer. So it's a way we can get access to this big burst of mana before our opponent does by pathing our own Realm Razer. But like I said, most of the time, we're just going to use it to kill our opponent's creatures. Mana base wise, pretty basic for a modern deck. 2 forests, 2 plains. Didn't include any basic mountains because I figured if we get Blood Moon, then our non-basics will be mountains anyway, so it didn't seem that important. 1 Sacred Foundry, 2 Stomping Ground, 2 Temple Garden, so 5 Shocklands, 8 Fetch Lands, 4 Windswept Tees, 4 Wooded Foothills, then a few Utility Lands, 3 Ghost Quarter. Pretty much every deck I play in Modern has some amount of Ghost Quarters. It just seems necessary in a world of Tron and Eldrazi and so forth. 2 Stirring Wildwood, couple Creature Lands, and a single Gavany Township. We're playing a bunch of mana dorks, playing a bunch of creatures. It's a low opportunity cost way as a backup plan to win the game. We can just pump up all of our creatures, put a bunch of counters on Birds of Paradise, and beat down with with our 0/1s. Sideboard wise, 2 Core Firewalkers for burn matchups, 2 Rending Volleys. Again, I've been working on these videos from before the banned and restricted announcement, so this is a twin answer. It will probably be replaced by something else now, but it's in there for the time being. 1 Rest in Peace, exiles everything from the graveyard. 1 Spellskite, does everything in Modern, really hard. Unless you're playing a budget deck and just can't afford it, you probably should have Spellskite in your sideboard in just about every deck, or main deck, in just about every deck you play in Modern. 2 Stony Silences for Affinity, 1 Eidolon of Rhetoric, which is a chord target against Storm or any big turn combo deck that's looking to play a bunch of cards in the same turn. Jeskai Ascendancy, so that's why that's there. A Fulminator Mage and 4 Crumble to Dust. 4 Crumble to Dust is probably too many, but this is a package to fight against Tron in the Eldrazi deck. Crumble to Dust just seems really well positioned, assuming that those are going to be the big decks moving forward, or among the big decks moving forward. And then 1 Sigarda, it's another target for Chord of Calling. and it has a sweet ability. Like, not only is it a 5/5 flying hexproof, which is pretty huge, and it's a 5-drop, which is a spot on the curve that we don't have any cord targets, so it's not bad to have a 5-drop cord target, but it has an ability where spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause you to sacrifice permanents. So if we cord for this in response to a Liliana or Annihilator triggers from Eldrazi and so forth, we don't have to sack anything. So it's another like silver bullet sideboard option. Anyway, that's the deck. As far as how successful it'll be, I'm not really sure. I'm skeptical that the Oblivion Sower package is actually going to work. It just seems like so far-fetched that we're going to be able to play a 6-drop, exile all the lands, and then have enough mana to play another 6-drop. But hey, this is against the odds. We try things like that. On the other hand, I think our deck has just so much value that I think we'll win some games where we play some Mana Dorks, Eternal Witness, Court of Calling, Restoration Angel, eventually use Realm Razer to exile all of our opponent's lands, and just basically value our opponent out of the game. So I'm going to say that overall, the deck itself probably can win at least 40% of the time, just based on how much value is packed into it. As far as winning because of Realm Razer, maybe 15% of the time. And as far as Realm Razer into Oblivion Sower, stealing all of our opponent's lands, that one I'm going to say maybe like 5% of the time, if that. Like, I'm not sure that that will ever actually happen. Anyway, I think it's going to be fun, which is the most important thing. We're all about having fun here on Against the Odds. So, I hope you enjoy the videos. Make sure to check out the website. That's where you'll find the poll for next week's Against the Odd, where you can vote for what deck we're going to play next. We have tons of other awesome stuff, content, decks, prices, metagame strategy, pretty much anything and everything you could want related to Magic the Gathering. And if you enjoyed this video, and you enjoyed the Realm Razer Against the Odds, make sure to click the subscribe button that's about to pop up on the bottom of your screen. It'll keep you up to date on all the latest and greatest in video content from mtggoldfish.com. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the videos, and I will talk to you soon.